The storm rolled across the prairie like an angry ocean, the wind howling through the broken fences and rattling the wooden walls of the small ranch house that stood alone miles from the nearest town. Caleb Turner had seen many storms in his life as a cowboy, but tonight's felt different, heavier somehow, like the sky itself carried sorrow. Caleb was a man who lived quietly, the kind of cowboy who spoke little but worked hard, spending his days tending cattle and repairing fences that the wild land constantly tried to tear down. He had lived alone since losing his parents years ago, and solitude had become as familiar to him as the worn leather saddle on his horse. That evening he had just finished securing the barn doors when he noticed something unusual near the dirt road that ran past his ranch. Through the sheets of rain and flashes of lightning, Caleb saw the dark outline of a stagecoach sitting crookedly in the mud. No horses, no driver, just the broken carriage swaying in the storm like a ghost of someone's forgotten journey. His instincts told him something wasn't right. Cowboys knew how to read the land, and tonight the land was whispering trouble. Pulling his coat tighter, Caleb mounted his horse and rode toward the abandoned coach. The wind nearly knocked him sideways as he approached, rain soaking his hat and running down his face, but when lightning split the sky, he saw movement beside the coach. At first he thought it was just debris blowing in the wind, but then he realized it was someone curled up on the ground. Caleb jumped from his horse and rushed forward. There, shivering and barely conscious, lay a young woman wrapped in a thin travel dress that was completely drenched by the storm. Her hair clung to her face, and her hands trembled violently as if she had been fighting the cold for hours. For a moment Caleb simply stared, stunned by the sight of someone so fragile abandoned in such a cruel night. He knelt beside her and gently touched her shoulder. "Miss, can you hear me?" he asked, his voice steady despite the roaring wind. Her eyes slowly opened, filled with fear and exhaustion, as though she expected another disappointment rather than help. Her lips moved weakly before any sound came out. "Please, don't leave me," she whispered, the words barely audible over the thunder. Those 4 words struck Caleb harder than the storm itself. A cowboy might be used to hardship, but seeing someone that hopeless awakened something deep in him. He lifted her carefully, wrapping his coat around her shoulders before placing her on his horse. The ride back to the ranch felt longer than usual as the storm raged on, but Caleb kept one hand steady on the reins and the other supporting the girl so she wouldn't fall. When they finally reached the house, he carried her inside and laid her near the fireplace, quickly adding logs until a warm light filled the room. As the fire crackled to life, the girl slowly regained consciousness. She looked around the modest ranch house as if unsure whether she was safe or still trapped in a nightmare. Caleb handed her a cup of warm water and spoke softly, "You're safe here." For a moment she simply stared at him, searching his face for signs of cruelty or deceit. But all she saw was a tired cowboy with kind eyes. Finally, tears welled in her eyes. "My name is Emily," she said quietly. "I came here, as a mail-order bride." The words hung in the air like a confession heavy with pain. She explained that the man who had sent for her never showed up in town. The stagecoach driver had left her near the road when the storm worsened, promising the ranch was nearby, but hours passed and no one came. Alone in a strange land with nowhere to go, she had slowly lost hope as the cold crept deeper into her bones. Caleb listened in silence, anger stirring inside him at the thought of someone abandoning a woman like that. He had never ordered a bride, never believed in treating a person like something that could be delivered in a box. Yet here she was, sitting in his home, looking like the last spark of hope in a storm that tried to swallow her whole. After a long pause, Caleb finally spoke the words that changed everything. "Well, Emily," he said gently, "looks like the storm brought you to the wrong ranch, but you're welcome to stay here until you figure out what comes next." The fire crackled warmly between them as the storm continued outside, and for the first time that night, Emily allowed herself to believe she might actually survive this strange new world. And sometimes, the most unexpected moments of kindness are the ones that start the greatest stories. If this story is touching your heart so far, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and join us for more unforgettable tales of courage, hope, and second chances. Morning arrived quietly after the storm, the prairie washed clean beneath a soft golden sunrise that stretched across the endless horizon. Caleb had been awake for hours already, fixing the broken fence near the barn, but his mind kept drifting back to the girl sleeping inside his house. Emily had looked so fragile by the fire the night before that he almost wondered if she would disappear by morning like a dream carried away by the wind. But when he stepped inside, he found her sitting at the wooden table, wrapped in one of his spare blankets, carefully studying the small ranch house as though trying to understand the life of the quiet cowboy who had rescued her. She greeted him with a shy smile, and though exhaustion still lingered in her eyes, there was also something new there, a faint spark of determination. Over breakfast she told him more of her story. Emily had grown up in a struggling town far east where jobs were scarce and opportunities even scarcer. When she saw an advertisement for a mail-order bride promising a new life in the Western Territories, she believed it was her chance to start again. She imagined a small ranch, a hard-working husband, and a place where she could finally belong. But the man who ordered her had apparently changed his mind or disappeared entirely, leaving her stranded in a place where she knew no one. Caleb listened quietly, occasionally nodding, his expression thoughtful. He understood disappointment well. The frontier had a way of testing every dream a person carried. After breakfast Emily insisted on helping with chores despite Caleb's protests that she should rest. To his surprise, she worked with determination, feeding the chickens, cleaning the kitchen, and even helping repair tools in the barn. By afternoon Caleb realized something remarkable. The ranch felt different. For years the place had been quiet, almost lifeless, but now there was laughter echoing through the barn and the smell of fresh bread drifting from the kitchen window. Emily wasn't just surviving, she was bringing warmth back into a home that had long forgotten what it felt like. Days slowly turned into weeks as the two of them settled into an unexpected rhythm. Caleb taught Emily how to ride and care for cattle, while Emily repaired old curtains, planted flowers near the porch, and turned the lonely ranch house into a place that actually felt alive. But the biggest change wasn't in the house or the land, it was in Caleb himself. The cowboy who once preferred silence now found himself looking forward to every conversation, every shared meal, every moment they spent working side by side. One evening as the sun dipped below the prairie, painting the sky with shades of orange and purple, Emily stood near the fence watching the cattle return from pasture. "You know," she said softly, "I thought coming west would be the worst mistake of my life." Caleb leaned against the fence beside her. "And now?" he asked. She smiled gently. "Now I think that storm might have saved me." The words lingered between them like a quiet truth neither had expected to find. Because sometimes life doesn't give us the future we planned, it gives us something better hidden inside the hardships we feared the most. Caleb looked across the land he had once believed would always be lonely, realizing that hope had arrived on a stormy night in the form of a girl who refused to give up. And Emily, who once believed she had been abandoned by fate, discovered that kindness from a stranger could build a new life stronger than any promise written in a letter. If this story reminded you that hope can appear when we least expect it, take a moment to subscribe to the channel, because many more powerful stories like this are waiting to inspire you. Sometimes all it takes is one act of kindness to change someone's entire world.